right, it is official as of earlier yesterday afternoon. The Washington Redskins signed Kirk Cousins to his second franchise tag deal. Can't really say this comes as much of a surprise. And I think why it doesn't come as much of a surprise is because there really was no indication, there was no reporting, there was nothing in regards to this franchise talking to Kirk Cousins or his agent about working on a long-term deal. Something that I think a lot of fans were looking forward to doing. Something that was at the cusp of everybody's lips prior to the end of the season with our last game. But definitely going into the off-season, as soon as we had lost pretty much our chances of going to the playoffs, this has become our number one concern. The idea of what we were going to do with Kirk Cousins, and we had a certain deadline to get to, and we definitely waited until the 12th hour to give him his tag, but there was absolutely no indication whatsoever that we were even reaching out to him, which is very telling. It's very telling. That honestly, that closes a lot of doors as far as I'm concerned, and you have to take a look at it from a certain perspective. You have to be very, very dynamic in your thinking when it comes to this deal and this situation that is the Kirk Cousins debacle. There are going to be some avenues that are going to be available to us. There are going to be some avenues that are not available to us. But let's take a look at this franchise tag that we had slapped on our quarterback. Obviously, we know a little bit about the franchise tag because we have franchise tagged him last year. And I believe it was at the tune of $22 million that we were signing him last year to play on that one-year tag. Now, slapping it on him this year is going to be $24 million. And there are a lot of people out there that were saying, look, if and I do believe I said the same thing, and I can't remember quite distinctly if I did say this or not. I'm pretty sure that I did. So, don't hold it to me if I didn't say it. But I do recall saying something to the effect of that if we do sign him to another franchise tag deal for the 2017 season, then Kirk Cousins will not be back to play as our starting franchise quarterback for 2018. There will be no long-term deal done. I do remember saying something distinctly about that. And that's unfortunate. But taking a look at the possible scenarios, now that we have slapped the franchise tag on him, now that we have not worked out a deal with Kirk Cousins whatsoever, then I honestly think that this is an indication as to our thought process for the last couple of years. We didn't want to work out a long-term deal with him before. Actually, we did. We came to the table with a long-term deal with him before. We lowballed him to $12 million. He denied it. We franchise tagged him $22 million, $21 million on a prove-it one-year deal. He comes out and he proves it. We don't sign him to a long-term deal then, which is something that we probably should have done. Even though I was adamant against it, if there's going to be any indication that you want to have Kirk Cousins as your long-term quarterback, you're going to work out a long-term deal somewhere in that season, which was last year. That didn't happen. Now, obviously, before this deadline, you should have worked out a deal. That didn't happen. It's really starting to show that we really don't want Kirk to be here. And I'm honestly, I think that I'm feeling about 80 to 90% certain that Kirk is not going to be here. And we have designs on exactly what we plan on doing with him. Now, obviously, there's three possible scenarios that are coming to the effect with this franchise tag. One of those possible options that we have is that we let him play on this one-year franchise tag deal for 2017, and then after 2017, we let him walk. The second possible scenario that we have is that we sign him to a franchise tag deal, which we have, and we try to work out a long-term deal throughout this season. That's probably not going to happen, because if it was going to happen this year, then it would have happened before. We definitely would have worked out a deal before. So, in my opinion, and if you want Burgundy Fly Guy's humble opinion, there is no way we're working out a long-term deal now. You can kick the long-term deal out the window. If you think that paying Kirk Cousins his money and keeping him here in Washington is still an option, then you're not taking a look in the hourglass. You're not seeing things the way that they are. You're seeing them the way that you want to see them, and you're not seeing the situation for what it is. The long-term deal is off the table. We have passed that intersection. It was way back there, and to turn the bus around to go back is an impossibility. So don't think that your stop is up ahead. Your stop is behind you. So we are not working out a long-term deal, and I think it'd be crazy at this point to work out a long-term deal under the second franchise tag. I'll get to that later, but that's our second option, is that we could negotiate a long-term deal while he's on this franchise tag. So yes, that is an option. The third possible option after signing him to this franchise tag deal is that we trade him. Now, trading him is the one thing that is that's at the lips of every single media individual on the planet at this point. Is we're going to start cooking up stories, and we're going to start asking all kinds of questions as far as which different teams are we going to be trading to. San Francisco, LA, whomever, Cleveland. The list is long and distinguished, and I think that's one of the things that I think that the media is kind of being. I think that's what they're the culprits of right now. Is a lot of them are doing a really, really good job of trying to turn out some articles, some content to bring attention to themselves, and that's unfortunate. I wouldn't read a whole lot into that, though, to tell you the truth. We've usually been pretty good about being on the down low about those types of deals and what we're looking at, per se, but I wouldn't necessarily look too hard at some of these articles as far as speculation as who we're talking to. I'd wait until something becomes actually official. Now, honestly, we're taking a look at what I had mentioned before about a long-term deal with Cousins in Washington, and how I think that situation is not going to be that offer's pretty much off the table. That ship has sailed. Honestly, working out a long-term deal with him, and the reason why I say this is because last year in 2016, up until this point, he was on a franchise tag deal, the first one that we slapped him on, and he was at a $21 to $22 million franchise tag. Now, I had mentioned in some videos before that is pretty much that's not your ceiling for working out a long-term deal. That is pretty much that's pretty much your floor. That's kind of your starting point. At that point, if you're gonna have a quarterback and slap on the franchise tag at $21 million, guess where the negotiations are going to start? Your negotiations are going to start at about $20, $21, $22 million. That's what it's going to be. And that was one of the reasons why I was not adamant about signing Kirk Cousins back to the football team, because I felt that was a lot of money to be signing a quarterback, especially for a team that was struggling to get into the playoffs. It needs a whole hell of a lot of help on defense. That needs a lot more depth on offense. Way too many positions to fill, and to go in to paying that kind of money to a quarterback didn't necessarily make any sense to me, and I was kind of against it. So going into this season in 2017, and now that you've slapped him with another franchise tag that's at 24, guess what your floor is at now? Your floor is no longer at $21 million. His agent is going to come back at you with the tag that you just got done slapping on him. You just got done slapping his client with a $24 million tag. The floor is now $24 million. And there are other teams out there that would pay that. And if I thought that you were crazy to sign Kirk Cousins to a $21 to a $22 million a year contract, guess where I stand on 24 and 25? I stand to the point of suicide at that point. I'm talking about eating a bullet. That's what I think your franchise should do if you're thinking about signing a quarterback like Kirk Cousins, who has yet to win a playoff game on his own. And with the credentials that he has, and granted he's young, he's still new, he's got a lot of potential, a lot of upside, but you're talking about one of the best, the absolute best deals in football to be had to Kirk Cousins. That doesn't make any sense to me. I think that's franchise suicide at this point. There's no way that I would sign off on that kind of deal. So if you're taking a look at if you're even taking a look at a 5 for 125 deal, oh my gosh, that's crazy. That's crazy talk to me. I don't understand it. And the difference between, of course, the exclusive and the non-exclusive tag, the non-exclusive tag, honestly, what that entails is that if you get signed to another team while you're on that tag deal, then the team that signs obviously gives up compensation through draft picks, and I do believe it's like 2 first-round draft picks, and that's just something that's not going to happen with Kirk Cousins. So we did not slap him with the non-exclusive. We ended up slapping him with the exclusive franchise tag. Now, with the exclusive franchise tag, obviously we do have to pay him $24 million this year, and with this. It is also, with this tag, this allows the opportunity for Kirk Cousins and his agent to talk to other teams as far as working out a deal. Unfortunately, he cannot talk to any teams that we do not allow him to talk to. So if, just shooting a scenario out of my rear end here, but let's say, for instance, the Tampa Bay not even Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but the Cleveland Browns. If the Cleveland Browns say, hey, we want to talk to his agent, we want to talk to Kirk Cousins, we have to say yay or nay. Take a look at that scenario and say, well, you know what? We take a look at what your situation is over there in Cleveland. We don't necessarily like where you sit in the draft. Yeah, you do have a lot of money to pay Kirk Cousins. That's nice, but we're not even necessarily looking at a couple of the players on a trade deal that don't necessarily appeal to us. So no, you cannot talk to Kirk Cousins and his agent. We're not going to exercise something out of that. Now, let's say Buffalo comes along and we say, you know what, we like where Buffalo sits in the draft. We like some of their players. We'd like to bring some of them over here on a trade. Maybe you get a draft pick or 2 out of it because we have some key holes to fill. That might be something we'd be interested in. So yes, you can talk to the Buffalo Bills. So yes, an exclusive franchise tag, in my opinion, from what I understand, allows you to get a little bit more control over who it is that Kirk Cousins and his agent can talk to as far as a trade is concerned. Now, it is rumored, obviously, that the San Francisco 49ers are a team that is very much in favor of trying to pick up a Kirk Cousins. That Kyle Shanahan is somebody that obviously knows Kirk Cousins, and that Kirk Cousins has made a comment in the media that he will only consider a trade going to San Francisco. I think that's a bunch of horse bucky. I think that's a bunch of crap. There's no way that Kirk Cousins is going to close any doors to any other football franchise in this league. He's going to exercise all options. If you take a look at what he has done on this football team as far as negotiating deals is concerned, he's a guy that's going to keep his options open, and he's going to think very strategically about what it is that he wants to do. And honestly, I'm not buying this Kyle Shanahan crap. I'm really not. And I said it in a previous video. I don't see how Kyle Shanahan is going to mortgage the future on a quarterback a second time. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that he's going to learn from the mistakes that him and his father made in D.C. Well, not necessarily him and his father. It was more like our owner and our general manager at the time. But he saw the ramifications of mortgaging the future on a quarterback. And I don't think he's going to be giving up the draft picks that we're talking about giving up for Kirk Cousins. I don't think that's going to happen. They have way too many holes. They have more holes to fill than we do. A lot more holes to fill. And they just can't be going out giving up draft picks for one quarterback that's going to fill all those holes. I don't see that happening. I see San Francisco kicking around the idea of a possible trade, but I don't see them as a viable possibility, simply because I don't think they're going to be willing to pony up with what it is that we're going to be asking for. Now, also one of the other things about working out this long-term deal with Kirk Cousins and how I don't necessarily think that that's going to happen, we've got other free agents on this football team that we haven't even talked to yet. Other free agents on this football team whose handlers, whose agents we haven't even discussed negotiations with. I don't think we've even called them up yet. As far as, the 2 biggest individuals on this team on our offense that we're looking at, of course, is Deshaun Jackson and Pierre Garçon. Those are 2 of our big hitters. You're talking about 2 individuals who are making $8-9 million a piece on this football franchise, and granted, that'd be a lot of money off our books to be able to spend in other places. But if you have no interest in bringing Kirk Cousins back, then you have no interest in bringing those 2 individuals back either. Which I think is one of the reasons why there was such a huge indication to me that Kirk Cousins probably wasn't going to be here in 2018. And frankly, it's looking even more to me like he's not even going to be here in 2017. If we try to work out a trade, we could end up working out a trade, but I don't understand. I don't see. If we're not going to bring back Garcon and Jackson, then you don't have any long-term visions in the 2017-2018 season with a Kirk Cousins. That's just not going to happen. Which, honestly, to tell you the truth, guys, we're talking about kind of a major. It's not an overhaul, but this is a facelift. This is a massive facelift on our offense. We're talking about major assets on our offense that made our offense go. And I don't know if I was necessarily much in favor of completely mothballing this offense. I would have liked to have kept a Garcon. I would like to have kept maybe even a Jackson and taken a look at some other possibilities at a quarterback position to at least have some weapons here, to have some options. Now, at this point, are you going to be able to win with any other quarterback right now that's out there without a Kirk Cousins? Probably not. It's going to really depend on who it is you plan on bringing in here, but the trade situation is what makes this interesting. I mean, you could probably it's tough. There's a couple different possibilities, but the teams that I think that are desperate to want to pick up Kirk and his services do not have a viable quarterback at that position for us to trade for. So at that point, you're looking at draft. Where do you sit in the draft? Are you sitting in the top 10 at the draft? And if you are, is that a possibility that we might be able to take that top 10 draft pick and select a quarterback at that position, then use our number 17 on a defensive player? I mean, who knows? It's going to be very interesting to see how our draft board is shaping out right now and the possibilities with this Kirk Cousins exclusive franchise tag situation is looking like. Now, what I think we are going to do is I think that we are looking at slapping the exclusive on this kid with the intentions of trading him. That's looking more and more like this is the direction that we are going to want to go. This is looking more and more like this has been the direction all along, to tell you the truth. I'd be very interested in finding out exactly how long this has been designed, how long we've been considering this, because let's face it, there have been no talks whatsoever to Kirk Cousins and his agent. That's very telling. Even though we've had audio proof and video proof of a general manager, not a general manager, a team president, because a general manager was told not to talk. Okay, but we've had a team president that's gone around on Radio Row saying, "Hey, this kid's going to be here. We want to secure this kid for the future. We're going to make sure that he stays in D.C." Liar. He's a damn liar. I'm just going to call him out right now. He is a damn liar because, first of all, the reason why I know he's a liar is because I know he's not that stupid. There's no way that he is that stupid. There's no way our president is this dumb. There's no way that you're going to slap a franchise tag on him and then try to work out a long-term deal under a $24 million franchise tag. That makes no sense whatsoever. And then not call Pierre Garcon or not call or try to work out some kind of deal with Deshaun Jackson. I mean, what are you thinking? You would have to be an imbecile to do that. A complete imbecile. To me, if you want to work out a long-term deal, you're going to want to secure the weapons and the protection that's around him from 2016, because we had a successful 2016 season with the weapons and the protection that were behind Kirk Cousins. The only thing that's different is McVay. You had no control over McVay leaving. But you have control over your high-priced quarterback leaving. You got control over your wide receivers that are leaving. You got control at the depth of that offensive line. There's things that you can control that you could obviously shore up and fix for this 2017 season. We've chosen not to do that. So I don't know what it is he's talking about. I don't necessarily know why he would give that answer on Media Row. But it is also very telling that you're telling your general manager, hey, you're not talking. You're not saying anything. Leave this Kirk Cousins situation to me. We know what we're going to do. We're not keeping him here. We're going to franchise tag him. We're going to think about trading him, or we're going to franchise tag him and we're going to let him walk. One of those two scenarios is probably the most likely as far as what's going to happen with Kirk Cousins in 2017. Let me handle it. You just worry about what it is that you're paid to do, and that is tally and evaluate. Keep your mouth shut, tally and evaluate. Get to watching film. I'll kiss the babies and comb my hair and talk to the media. So that situation makes sense to me. So I'm asking myself, what do I think it is that we're going to do? I think that we're going to trade him. I think we're going to trade him to a team, and I think we're looking at very specific things, and I think we've even got a couple of teams that we're probably looking at as far as a possible trade. Now, there's a couple different scenarios that we're looking at if we are looking at trading Kirk Cousins on this franchise tag. There are a couple teams that I do think that would consider Kirk Cousins and that $24 million price tag because they feel that he would be an asset to their football team. Now, obviously, we're not going to allow... And I hate to say this, guys, but if I'm the owner of this football team, there is not a team on earth. There's not a single team in this league that I wouldn't consider a trade to. In other words, I'm not going to sit here and take a look at the Dallas Cowboys and say, you know what, I don't want him playing in a Cowboy uniform, so you can't talk to them. If the Cowboys come to me with an offer that I can't turn away from, I'm going to take it. But that's not a scenario because obviously the Cowboys don't need a quarterback. So it's very, very comfortable for me to say that. I can say that comfortably knowing that there's no way the Cowboys are going to be trading draft picks and players for a Kirk Cousins. They already have their quarterback. But I will say that there are teams out there that would want to sit down at the table with the Washington Redskins and say, hey, this is what we have to offer. Now, there's a couple scenarios here that we're looking at. We could look at draft pick compensation. We could look at draft pick compensation and player trade. Any one of those scenarios works for me. But in my honest and humble opinion, there's no way I'm walking away from a Kirk Cousins trade deal unless it has, no matter what the deal is, no matter what it is, in either one of those scenarios, there's no way that I'm even considering what's on the table unless if at the end of the day there's a number one or at least a two first round or a second round draft pick on that table. I would consider a second round draft pick on the table if you were giving me key additions to filling up and shoring up some of the gaps that I have on defense, special teams, or offense. That's what I would take a two for that. And mind you guys, Kirk Cousins is worth a first round draft pick. He's come a long way. I remember in right before we signed his franchise tag deal, I remember that I wanted to trade it. Back when Robert Griffin III was here, I said back then that we needed to trade Kirk Cousins. We needed to trade Kirk Cousins not because I thought it was good. We needed to trade Kirk Cousins because we had two really good up-and-coming rookie, good quarterbacks on our team. And one of them was obviously our franchise quarterback. The other one was not. And I felt if that other one was not, before his rookie deal is up and we have to sign him to a contract extension, trade him. He's worth something to somebody. You could get possibly a third round draft pick if you played your cards right. But would I have taken a fourth round or a fifth round draft pick for Kirk Cousins then? Probably, even though I got him out of the fourth round in 2012, I'm not exactly, I'm breaking even with the fourth round draft pick. I'm probably losing if I take a fifth, but hey, that's 1/5 more than what I had, before. So would I have considered it then? Absolutely, I would have done it then, but we didn't. We kept him. Griffin went to Cleveland. We ended up using him as our franchise quarterback, and then, of course, we franchise tagged him. We could have worked out a long-term deal then, but we decided not to. Now, since that time, and with the statistics that he has come out with and the success that he has had on offense, he is worth a first-round draft. So there are teams out there that would give up a first-round draft selection or two. I mean, who knows? We could get a 2017 first round and a 2018 first round if a team out there was desperate enough to sequester his services. There are a couple teams out there who would probably ponder a deal like that. Would I take a deal? Would I take a first round 2017 and a first round 2018 for Kirk Cousins? You bet your ass I would. In a heartbeat, I would. You want that? Sure. Deal. Here you go. Give me my draft picks. You can have your Kirk Cousins. Guys, Kirk Cousins was a fourth round draft selection. If you guys think that we cannot get a franchise quarterback unless if we pick him up in the first round, early in the first round, then you really... it's a small world that you live in. It's a small world that you live in. There are a lot of quarterbacks out there, a lot of quarterbacks that have been taken early in the first round that didn't amount to a hill of crap in China. There are a lot of quarterbacks out there that ended up, being really, really good quarterbacks that did not come within the first 2 or 3 rounds of the draft. Really good quarterbacks. I would take a really decent quarterback in the 3rd or the 4th round. Dak Prescott wasn't even a first-round draft selection. So, taking a look at it as it is, if you have your eye on a quarterback, and I've said this before, guys, I've said this in a video before, if you recall, I think that Scott McLuhan might have something up his sleeve. I don't necessarily know if Scott McLuhan's signing off wholeheartedly on a Kirk Cousins franchise tag via trade or franchise tag via walk, unless he's got a couple guys on his board saying, I got a couple guys up here that are just as good as Kirk Cousins, that can throw the ball just as good, that me and Jay have been looking at, and we can both agree can run this offense just as good as a Kirk Cousins, and I think I can get those guys in the 3rd, 4th, or 5th round. Seriously, I think that some people are overlooking some of these guys. You can see some of these guys aren't flashy, but they can stand in the pocket and throw that pill. I think I could pick some of those guys up. So who knows? There's all kinds of different possibilities out there. Is it going to be sad for me to see Kirk go if that's what ends up happening? Honestly, I think Kirk is a much better quarterback than our team president and our team owner give him credit for. As a matter of fact, guys, this whole thing goes back to the Griffin era. It really, really does. I think that getting Kirk out of D.C. is something that I have been adamant about doing, and it has nothing to do with the fact that I don't like Kirk Cousins. I like Kirk Cousins. I've been an advocate of his. It's just not going to work here in D.C., man. It's not going to work here. We don't appreciate this kid whatsoever. I'm gonna side. I'm the error on the side of caution here, and I'm gonna completely credit Redskins Review for this. But he's absolutely right when he says we don't deserve him. DC fans don't deserve him. The organization doesn't deserve him, and he needs to go to some place that well, at least I'm saying that he needs to go someplace that does deserve him. But this goes back to the Griffin era. This goes back to an era of an owner that was absolutely completely head over heels in love with a kid out of Baylor. Had to have this kid out of Baylor. I was the same way, though. I can't really I can't condescend to him too much on this because I wanted that same kid out of Baylor. And we ended up getting him. And in lieu of getting him as well, we also had a Hall of Fame Super Bowl winning coach that didn't quite believe in him. That said, you know what? I'm going to take the kid that I want out of the 4th round. You want the kid that you want out of the 1st. Let's trade this mortgage of future on him. Let's pick him up, but I'm going to pick up the guy that I want in the 4th. And 2 years later, look at where we were. 3 years later, look at where we were. And now Kirk Cousins is the last vestige of the Mike Shanahan era in D.C. And Mike has been laughing ever since he left. Ever since he left. And you know that that's a stick. That's a thorn in Daniel Snyder's side. And as much as he can't stand the idea of the Mike Shanahan era, especially how it ended, he really can't stand the fact that Mike Shanahan just may have been right. And Kirk Cousins is proof positive of that. And I think that's an extremely petty and immature and stupid way to think about things when you were the owner of a multi-million-dollar franchise, one of the oldest franchises in the NFL, one of the most respected, has been since long before he became owner of this football team. I don't think it's conduct that becoming of an individual who is in charge and at the helm of such a football franchise, but this is where we are. This is the world that we have to live in. We have to live in this world with an owner who is petty. We have to live in this era with an owner who holds grudges and doesn't like to be embarrassed and still is able to make the calls that he is able to make. To tell you the truth, I find it really, really hard to believe that he's as hands-off as a lot of people say he is when we find ourselves in situations just like this. Kirk Cousins, I don't care what anybody says. Okay, Kirk Cousins has the potential to be a franchise quarterback. Bar none. He has the potential to be a franchise quarterback. And for those of you who are going to sit there and try to lob him into the same category as a Tony Romo. I don't know what to say to you guys, because I don't see how their careers parallel in any way, shape, or form. I don't consider us to be the Dallas Cowboys. We're nothing like the Dallas Cowboys. Our owner is nothing like, the Cowboys owner. We're talking about two completely separate franchises with two completely separate regimes, two completely separate defenses, offensive schemes, everything. So to compare him, to sit there and say he's just like Tony Romo and he can't win the big one, come on, man. I mean, you're talking about a kid whose career, he still has a lot of football left to play. If he lands with the right team and the right scheme, he could very well be a Super Bowl champion. In my honest opinion, I think that Joe Gibbs could win a Super Bowl with Kirk Cousins, because Kirk Cousins, to me, was a lot better than Mark Rippon. I remember Mark Rippon. Mark Rippon was a decent quarterback. He was not a great quarterback. He wasn't phenomenal. He wasn't a world beater. Okay, he wasn't a backbreaker. He was very intelligent. He had a deep arm on him, but more often than not, that guy was just average. More often than not, if it wasn't for our running game and our defense, we probably wouldn't have won the Super Bowl that year against Buffalo. Do I think that Kirk Cousins could have outplayed Mark Rippon? Absolutely. I honestly think that he could have, just the way that he was, just the way that he's able to dish the pill to different members on offense. But all that notwithstanding, guys, Kirk Cousins, non-exclusive, actually the exclusive franchise tag, is going to remain on the Washington Redskins at least until now. But again, the three possibilities that we're looking at is pretty much letting him play out this 1 year and then walking, which is a possibility. It would be heartbreaking if that happened. The second one is that we sign him to the franchise tag and we work out a long-term deal. I've explained as to why I do not think that that's going to happen. I find it highly, highly unlikely that that's going to happen. And if it did, we'd be crazy. And three, the possible scenario is that after signing him to this franchise tag deal, that we trade him. That seems to be the more likely avenue, and that's the one I think that we're probably planning on. So, very interesting things that are going on. This is going to be a very interesting offseason, especially if you're a Redskins vidmaker. Some very, very interesting things to report, because this is just the tip of the iceberg, folks. This is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more coming. And I'm going to say it right now. I'm going to say something that a lot of you are not going to like, and I'm not going to like saying it, and I hate myself for even thinking it. And this is horrible to think about. This is scary to think about. I'm thinking about Jay Gruden here. Jay Gruden's going into the tail end of his contract year as Redskins coach. An offensive-minded coach, a quarterback guru, was an individual that we had hired when we hired Jay Gruden. And I'm telling you, if Kirk Cousins gets traded, if Kirk Cousins walks, and we end up taking a hit at quarterback, which we probably are going to, and Pierre Garçon is gone, and Deshaun Jackson is gone, that's two of our major weapons, and you're looking at Jamison Crowder, who's not a number one receiver. You're looking at Jordan Reed, who's probably going to be our number one receiver / tight end. An individual who has a tough time staying healthy, but he did last year. I'm proud of him for that. And then you're taking a look at Achilles himself, Mr. Josh Doxson, who I'm loving the videos that he's got coming out with him and his workouts, but that does very little to instill any kind of confidence in me. And you got those three individuals plus whatever's coming out of the draft. It's not looking too good for us on offense, especially with the shoddy running game that we have going on right now and our inability to want to address the situation on offensive line. I don't have a whole lot of hope in our offense being much of a producer in the 2017 season. If the way things are looking right now, if things don't take a turn quickly in a much more positive direction than what they are right now, you're not going to see Jay Gruden back here. Jay Gruden's not going to come back. I think that we're just going to work out what's little on his deal, and then as soon as it's up, he's gone. And I think that his contract, once his contract is up, we're not going to end up re-signing him, and I don't think that not signing him to a long-term deal is not going to give him a whole lot of confidence in his job here. So you're only going to see a marginal effort on his part before he starts looking at other places to go himself. I don't necessarily know if I would count Scott McGluen out yet, though. I don't know if I would go as far as that. I realize that there's a lot of talk about us not having confidence in him, and this may be his last year. I'm not buying it. I'm really not buying it. I think one of the hardest commodities to come upon in this league is not at quarterback. It's not at coach. Those things are very difficult to find. But I think one of the hardest, I'm talking about one of the most difficult things to find in this league that helps your franchise out a tremendous amount is a solid, top-notch, top-of-the-heap talent evaluator. That's the key. That's what if you can find a unicorn out in the woods, man, that's it. That's your unicorn. Your unicorn, he's the one that's going to find your quarterback for you. You know, he's the one that's probably going to have a really good sway over whether you get a good head coach. If a good head coach knows he's coming into a franchise that has a really, really good top-notch talent evaluation team and a good scouting team, he's going to feel more comfortable about coming here. So is a quarterback. So that's going to do it for me, guys. A lot more coming. There's going to be some more videos coming because there's going to be a lot more news coming. So I'd say hang in there. It's not all doom and gloom yet, but we'll see how this Kirk Cousins situation pans out. So until then, for all of us fans of the Twin Feather, we ride together, Redskins for life. Peace out. We'll see you next time.